Hello and welcome to Thinkpod, powered by the FII Institute. I'm your host, Mark Barton, and for over 2 decades, I've been at the forefront of global conversations on the issues that matter the most. In this series, I'll be meeting with the leaders who are rising to tackle the grand challenges that face humanity right now. Together, we'll be discussing the radical ideas and transformative solutions that'll benefit both people and planet. In this episode, we're joined by Sian Sutherland, a former plastic addict turned campaigner. Sian is a whirlwind of energy who's determined to force governments and businesses into action to curb plastic usage. We learn about the dangers plastic poses to our health and why plastic is a gateway to a world of rampant consumerism. Sian, thank you very much for joining us today. I love this concept of plastic being a gateway drug.
I think it's the easiest way to explain why it's so important. And we know, I think we've become addicted to plastic, haven't we? We don't believe we can live without it. I don't want to diminish, the impact of true addiction.
Yes.
But human race is addicted to plastic. We really are. And the fact that, my personal obsession with it is I know that if we fix the plastic crisis, we will directly and indirectly fix so much else.
And elaborate on that, because people will be watching, listening to this, just thinking it's just about plastic. But you're saying, it's about everything.
Let's go back.
Yes.
Just a couple of decades, really. 3 decades maybe, and think, so what has caused the climate crisis? And it is hyperconsumption. Us in the West buying so much stuff from those coal-fired factories in China and beyond, buying, having so much stuff we now have to outsource the storage of our stuff. So hyperconsumption is the cause of the climate crisis. And what was the one material that the invention of which allowed us to break that centuries-old
plastic,
system
isn't it?
of take, make, repair, reuse, share? What material allowed us to become just take, make, and wasters? And that material was plastic. So that's why I think it is such an extraordinary gateway into fixing everything, because there is not enough resource on the planet without plastic for us to consume at these giddy heights.
I love your words. Plastic is joyless clutter. Often it's neither beautiful nor functional. It devours space. But where did this wonderful use of words come from?
I love words. For me, words are, it's appropriate because we're doing a podcast now.
Yes.
But words are like chemical weapons. When somebody says something to you, it penetrates you, and it can either make you feel joyful or it can destroy you.
Yes.
So words are you're a journalist, so you understand. They are extraordinarily powerful. And so I think part of my goal really at A Plastic Planet is how can we reinvent the language of perhaps environmentalism and create a vision of a different kind of future.
Why is the language so important?
I think the old way hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And much as we need the dyed-in-the-wool activists, the Greenpeaces, board the boat. We need that level of extreme activism. And there are some extraordinary environmentalists out there. I sit back sometimes and think, and where are we? And how effective has it been? So we need to change everything, and we need to change the language as well. And I read something really interesting only the other day, which was an environmental journalist saying, I want to apologize to the world. Because I realise now for 25 years I have been using my craft to try and spread a message, but I have compromised my message because I wanted a seat at the table. And so in order to appease the fossil fuel industry, industry at large, governments, and to have a seat at the table, I compromised my message of what I knew was actually true. And now I realise we need a new table. So what have I been doing for the last 25 years? And that's why I think having a new language, a new visual language as well, everything we do at A Plastic Planet, it's a different look and feel.
Your website is amazing. You mention words and they trigger emotions, and plastic triggers emotions. And I think what you're doing, it's changing the perception of how people relate to plastic.
I hope so, in some small way, because I think if we see it for what it is, derived from fossil fuels, the most subsidized, powerful industry on the planet. So plastic is the most subsidized, most powerful material on the planet. If we see it for what it is, and right now it is plan B for the fossil fuel industry, then I think we can step back and realize it is not the default for everything anymore. We need to reinvent our entire world of materials. And as part of that, we will reinvent the language of materials.
Let's talk about this reinvention. We've had the UN Environment Assembly, of course, and they made this historic resolution, and they're trying to negotiate this wonderful international legally blinding plastics agreement by 2024. For those who aren't in the know,
Yes.
explain how important this is.
Yeah, absolutely vital, because what we know is nobody can fix this problem alone. One man's trash is another man's problem. In the UK, we still export over 60% of our plastic waste, often to...
Where does it go?
Malaysia, Poland,
Right.
Turkey. Our Tesco carrier bags are found filled with rubbish still in the jungle in Malaysia. It is being burnt on the roadsides of Turkish villages. It is shameful that we do not deal with our own dirt. We are the second biggest exporter of plastic waste in the world. The US are number one. We are the second biggest producer of plastic waste per capita.
But back to the UN, from source to sea, I mean, how will it address it? What's it trying to address? And is it the panacea? Is it the answer?
Yeah, there are three really important aspects to the beginnings of this treaty process that everybody who cares about this, and that should be, 7.6 billion people on the planet.
They're trying to achieve it by 2024, aren't they? So
and that's
process,
a very short space of time.
Yes.
So we don't have a treaty yet.
Okay.
But we are starting the negotiations of that treaty. And the first thing is it has been agreed that by all member states it will be legally binding, unlike the Paris Agreement. So this is huge. The second thing is that it will address the entire lifespan of plastic. And this, of course, the plastics industry, aka the fossil fuel industry, don't want that. They want us to just look at that little bit in the middle.
Yes.
They don't want to look at, the toxicity, the greenhouse gases, the carbon. Plastic is solid carbon that is emitted from its very point of extraction all the way through to its never-ending end of life. And then the third thing, which is radical, is that they want to look at the impact on human health. And this is the game changer, because when you look at the world of plastic, let's stop imagining there's some mythical, ethical consumer and it's all about how people shop. No. People buy what they're sold. We need to sell something different to people and they will buy something different. It's really that simple.
So what's the alternative?
Industry need to sell them something different, and governments need to mandate that industry do it faster.
And you're pressurizing industry?
At A Plastic Planet, we focus on, always look at it as like the burger of responsibility.
Yeah.
The bottom of the bun is the shopper, completely disempowered. Let's just sell that person something different and take the guilt away from them.
Because what's in front of them, they'll buy.
Yeah, so we got the customer at the bottom, you've got governments on top of our seedy bun, dare I say it. And then in the middle, you've got industry. This is where the power lies. So we work with industry, with the likes of Unilever and Kraft Heinz.
Because your words are, excuse my notes, you say we are pro-business and industry. How does that work?
Because my background is that of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I am the least likely eco-warrior you will ever meet. I have never been somebody in the world of environmentalism, which is probably why I have this radical naivety. I'm ashamed to say. I'm ashamed to say because I've been busy growing businesses.
Yes,
I've been the problem. Largely, I've been the problem. But I know that business is the most important tool that we have. It's the only tool we have. And so we have to create a much stronger tool of change in business because, to be honest, governments, they do what business tells them.
So how do you interact with business? What's the process? Give me some examples, the results, the actual high impact.
So we have what I call a twin track approach.
Yeah.
So, for example, the 1 trillion plastic sachets that are pumped out every year globally. We are calling on the UK government to be the first country in the world to ban the plastic sachet. And I think 2 months ago in the Times, front page of the Times, the UK are going to ban the plastic sachet. But As an entrepreneur, I don't believe it's good enough to just get something banned. We have to help industry. So we also work with one of the biggest users of the plastic sachet, the iconic Heinz tomato ketchup sachet, to see how can we help them, because through all our work in the last 6 years, we have become a magnet for all the new innovation, the new coatings, the new materials, this extraordinary new bioeconomy that is burgeoning now, so that we can put things together in a way that perhaps the behemoths, the giants who think in the old way, have not looked at yet. So we work with Kraft Heinz and with Unilever, another massive user of plastic, to see how can we help them change as well. So we work within industry to ignite and inspire them to turn off that plastic.
Is there a knock-on
tap.
effect? If Unilever does something, do the rest just follow suit?
Yes, you change the system.
Are you seeing that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, a tiny example of it, but actually quite massive, is you look at tea bags. Tea bags, historically, the majority of them, there was plastic in that tea bag. So we were steeping in boiling water plastic as well as tea, which is not healthy.
And what does that
for us.
do to you?
I'll come back to that.
Yeah, please do.
And then, of course, another few headlines globally of there's plastic in our tea bags. And then gradually, one by one, every tea brand is starting to take the plastic out. Legislation didn't have to happen because the media covered it. And therefore, the tea bags themselves, the tea manufacturers moved the market.
So you
this
bypass the government.
Yeah,
the
this
media,
is where we
so
need to have it.
This is why the media is so important for you.
So important. We have to keep a spotlight on it. You know, a campaign we've launched recently is about plastic pint cups. How bonkers is this? Billions of plastic pint cups used globally. But I have no idea why. COVID, of course, has accelerated this. We need to use things that are reused again and again. The pub, the bar used to be one of the most sustainable industries in the world, with renewable beer kegs and glasses that were washed countless times. Suddenly, we now have the plastic pint cup. We live in a libertarian society. We don't enjoy banning things. Our government doesn't want to ban things. They want a bonfire of regulation right now, post-Brexit. But we have to ban certain things because that then creates a vacuum, and that's where innovation happens. And at the moment, because plastic is so omnipresent, it's so cheap, there's such an overabundance of plastic. It's not plastic's fault.
Yes.
Who knew man could invent?
Fault.
Who knew man could invent a material that lasts forever? And what do we do with it? Do we put it on a pedestal? Do we price it like gold? Do we use it for things that we want to last forever? No, 40% of it we use for packaging that we use once and we chuck in a bin, thinking some recycling fairy is going to deal with it.
Recycling, it's not the answer, is it?
No. Recycling, forgive me, the number one misconception about plastic is that
recycle,
all we need
you'll
to
be
do...
fine.
Yeah,
and
all
I
we
can
need to
forget
do.
all about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Why have we got that so wrong?
We've been hoodwinked by the fossil fuel industry, who back in the 70s and 80s realised we had a problem. And that's when they started talking about recycling. And it's been well documented. Yes. You may have seen some of the documentaries that unpack that. And a little bit like the fossil fuel industry, we're starting to get the whistleblowers now saying, we just made it
So
up.
are myths deliberately perpetuated, or are many perpetuated and some just stick? How do you know which myth is going to stick?
I think it's if we want it to be true. Then it's easier to stick. Would it be great if plastic actually wasn't a problem? Yes, because it's made our lives so easy, so convenient. But it is a problem. So we must realise that it is a myth that recycling is ever going to get us out of this problem. It isn't. Globally, 9% of plastic is recycled once, rarely twice. This is where we need to realise recycling is never going to work, because if it did, then why haven't Coca-Cola built a recycling infrastructure to get their material back for the 120 billion bottles they pump out?
And you've said about Coca-Cola, they're hiding behind the public instead of taking responsibility. I mean, is the public taking any of the blame here or not? You said that if we're given it in front of us in the supermarket, we'll be fine. But
tell me, when you buy things in plastic,
yes,
do you get a little pang of guilt now?
Yeah.
Why is it your fault? Why is it your problem? Why do you have the guilt when we have now got a system in the world where if there is some kind of massive oil spill, of fossil fuel pollution like the Valdez, the ExxonMobil, we knew who to blame for that. We knew who had to clean it up. We knew who had to pay the fine. We pointed the finger at ExxonMobil and they got the blame because it was their fault. Exactly the same form of fossil fuel pollution in the form of plastic. And that's why I cite Coca-Cola, and I rarely like to name and shame.
Because you do, one of your core things is no blame, no guilt. I love that.
Exactly.
So you don't like to sort of name and shame, because that's not the way forward, is it?
But Coca-Cola I'm going to mention,
Go on.
because they, not only do they have zero responsibility for that 120 billion plastic bottles they pump out that devastate and infect the planet and everything that lives on it, they blame you. So I don't mind if they say, we've got a serious problem here and we need to fix it.
They offload
but the
it onto
fact
us.
that for decades they have been saying, if only the consumer would pop it into the right bin. We don't have a packaging problem, we've got a recycling problem. It's not our fault. And that I do take umbrage with.
I want to come back to legislation because it's so important, the UN, resolution. Do we need a global resolution? Once we get it, if we get it by 2024, is that it? Are we fine? Or do we need further legislation?
We need to act now.
Right.
And one of the things that we're very engaged at A Plastic Planet is calling for more bans, because we ban
on a
straw.
national level, on a regional level, just
yeah.
yeah.
Let's look at the bag. 65 countries have already banned the plastic bag. Rwanda, South Korea, these countries, there are no bags. It's a $37,000 fine in Rwanda, or 4 years in prison for having a plastic bag.
So ban it, law, really important.
Because then you and I don't have that plastic
Yeah.
guilt. We know that we can shop guilt-free without thinking that everything that we're buying is going to be infecting our planet for centuries, for our children's children. And I think this generation are growing up realizing that there is a hole inside us.
Yes.
And we are filling it, or my generation, we've been filling it with stuff, and it hasn't worked. And there is no coincidence that the mental health crisis is happening at the same time as the climate crisis. Because we are nature. We are connected to nature. It isn't something that we can, let's care about nature now. No, we come from nature. We're intrinsically connected. And when we disconnect, we are incredibly unhappy. And I think we saw that through the pandemic. When we were deprived of nature. We were given half an hour a day. In many countries where we were allowed to go outside, and the skies were bluer and the grass was greener for us, and we yearned it. And I think we are waking up to the fact that we need to get back into sympathy, into harmony with nature in a way that we haven't been for decades.
And you're a great part of that process, is including plastic into that discussion. How are developing nations taking on, this notion of reducing plastic use?
Well, one thing I think we have to be very careful of is when we talk about we need to reduce consumption, we need to be fair.
Yes.
And there are
it's
billions.
Higher costs for that.
Exactly. There are billions of people that do not have enough to consume, and then there are billions of people that have far too much. So we need to be fair, that we cannot deny people the right to have a better life and to have the things that they fundamentally need.
So how do you address that then? We're asking, obviously, there's climate, there's reducing, plastics, all those things, there's a front cost. The poor especially will be hit.
Yeah.
How do you address that in your narrative?
It is immoral for us in the rich West to manufacture and export and sell to developing countries things that are wrapped in plastic when there is no infrastructure to deal with it. How has that ever been allowed to happen, where there are whole islands now that are just awash, seas of plastic, destroying their way of living, destroying the rivers, destroying the fish within the rivers? So we need to stop exporting things and selling things that are wrapped in plastic, period. Because that is imperialism of the worst kind, capitalism of the worst kind. If we could do that, that would be a great start. And we have to stop sending other people our waste. How shocking is it that we're still doing that today, knowing what we know? And the only other answer for us, landfill in the UK and parts of Europe is way too expensive now. We're burning it. And we need to stop pretending this new thing, waste to energy. We've given it a lovely phrase. It sounds kind of cozy. We're warming our hospitals. We're heating our nurseries with this waste to energy. We've given it a second life. We're burning fossil fuels. That's all we're doing. That was momentarily a bottle or a box or a bag, but we're burning fossil fuels. So we need to face facts. We need to wean ourselves off fossil fuels and the derivatives of fossil fuels, and that is plastic.
But things have got better since 2017 when you formed the Plastic Planet.
I'd love to think that we'd had any impact at all, but no, we are still set to treble plastic production because there is this enormous pressure on governments to, I mean, look in the US, 42 new polymer manufacturing facilities are being built right now, licensed in 2019 and onwards, 42. So you can imagine there is no reduction in plastic forecast right now.
You said, I love to think we've had an impact. Do you come back to that a lot? What impact are we having?
There is not an industry or a government, pretty much, on the planet that doesn't have a plastic pledge, a plastic promise,
really?
some
They
kind
all
of
have
commitment.
some sort of
They've
thing.
all got their ESG. Plastic will be in there because plastic is popular.
Yeah.
So, it's visible. It's all like carbon. I don't know, I can't see it, can't feel it, can't touch it. Plastic, we feel guilty. So every business has some kind of commitment. But if every single voluntary commitment were to be successful, we would see a maximum of 7% reduction in plastic pollution flooding into our oceans by 2030. And that's a 20% reduction in what is going to be a trebling of plastic production.
Amazing.
We need to change. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's 6 miles deep. We talk about cleaning up the oceans. We've got to get real. We're never going to clean up the oceans. It's invisible to the human eye. What kind of Hoover is going to clean up the oceans? It's never going to happen. We just need to stop. Nature will somehow fix the insult that we must take responsibility for. But what we have to do is stop doing what we're doing. And then we come to the impact on human health. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a born optimist. I believe in this bright, shiny future that we're all going to get to. But the impact on human health is absolutely undeniable. And when people talk about this is the asbestos, the tobacco of our generation, it will be the irrefutable proof that is coming so fast of the impact on human health, particularly for pregnancy, particularly for newborn babies. That will be the lever of change, because then you have corporate risk.
I think we're going to finish on that note. How powerful. You're brilliant. Thank you, Sian.
Oh, thank you so much.
In these turbulent times, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to ThinkPod for more insight and analysis.